Ke nna Motshabi Moloi, moradi wa Albertina, Mama Thola le Joseph Mbutana Moloi. Ke le lekgolokwe le hlaba Botswana, le hlaba kgoho ka lemao ka sebonong, le hlaba le isa kgorong ha makwakwane. Makwakwane a e ja a e halala, a re kgutla hape o e eketsa, motho wa wetsi.
Welcome to The Journey with Mpo podcast, a sacred space for healing, love, and rediscovering your life purpose. Introducing your host, Mpo.
Okay. How was your day yesterday? What did you do?
Yesterday?
Yes.
Oh, goodness. It seems so long ago.
We're testing the mic, so you could just give us like the short version of it.
I know what I always do in the morning is I always get up every day and do my meditations. So that's always the first thing that I do, prayers, meditation. And then I often lie in bed thinking, should I go for a run? Or should I have a cup of coffee? And I know if I have a cup of coffee first, chances are I'm not going out for a run. So I think yesterday I opted for, rather than that, I just went and did my so I have this app, this training app where I do the 7 minute exercises. So that's what I did. So instead of running, I did, body weight training, which I love. The rest of the day is a blur.
Okay, let's get started. Hello, Journey with Mpo, friends and family. Today's featured guest is Thola Bennie, a South African female podcaster. Thola is the founder and host of the podcast show Phoenix Rising, Finding Your Life Calling with Thola Bennie. This superwoman is also a life coach, motivational speaker, author, freelance blogger, and social media content creator. In this episode, Thola and I will be discussing her early childhood, gender-based violence with the focus on substance abuse, the importance of self-love, podcasting, and the South African COVID experience. Wah, wah, wah. Good morning, Thola. I know you're an early riser, but I also just wanted to thank you for waking up early to record this episode with us.
Good morning. I am excited. I am here and, it's all good. And thank you for the introduction. It's always when you listen to someone introducing you and you think, that's me? Is she talking about me? I guess she is.
Yeah, that's me all the time.
I like the superwoman label. I know, right? So thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay. So as a life coach who focuses primarily on health, fitness, and travel, in your experience, what would you say are some of the challenges people have with breaking unhealthy patterns and behaviors?
Oh, it's being comfortable. It's that whole comfortability factor. If your life is comfortable, and I'm using inverted commas, as you perceive it to be, why would you change anything? You know what I mean? It's resistance to change because you've gotten into this comfortable, I don't want to say rut, but it is in a way kind of a rut that you need to break through. And so that's very difficult. First of all, to recognize the fact that you need to change, and then to take the steps out the door to go out there and run or join the gym or buy healthy food. It's a whole lot of steps that are involved. So I think admitting that
Mm.
you have hit a low point is usually the first step. And I say that because I also talk about my journey to a healthy lifestyle and how I got to it. And I
Mm.
often say, for me, it was that moment when I realized that I had hit rock bottom in terms of, my health, my looks. And then
Mm.
saying to myself, okay, this cannot carry on. It can't be business as usual. Something's gotta give, something needs to
Mm.
change. So definitely that's what I would say is
Mm.
the biggest challenge.
So, so there's the getting started on the journey to breaking those unhealthy habits, behaviors, and patterns. And then there's also staying on that path, right? Because sometimes, do I go jogging or do I
Yeah.
have that cup of coffee? Do I go jogging or do I have that cup of coffee?
Right.
So, what are some of the things that you do that keep you on that path?
I have two that immediately come to mind. Number one is building a routine, because once you get into the routine, it's like if you don't do the next thing that you're
Mm.
supposed to do in your daily routine, it throws you off. And then something's missing. I didn't do my meditation. Whenever I don't do my meditation for whatever reason, maybe I was woken up early and I had to dash off somewhere and I didn't dedicate time to it, then it's like everything is
Mm.
just, something's off. So it's building that routine to know that this is what I do. This and I'm a big advocate for routine, but for me it's mostly routine at least in the morning, half of your day. Because for me, the rest of the day, anything goes.
Mm.
And I love that, because that means I'm flexible enough to, hey, let's do this, hey, let me take a nap, whatever. But as long as I know that on a daily basis, I've had my meditations,
Mm.
I've had my 1 hour run or gym session or whatever it is that comes after. And then I do a bit of work. Most of my work is online, if not all of my work, actually. So I dedicate time to that in the morning and I go and sit out in
Mm.
the balcony and I work solidly for 2 hours. So it's that kind of a routine. So if I don't go jogging, I know that my routine has been thrown off, and it doesn't feel good. And then the
Mm.
second thing is to try and imagine how you are going to feel afterwards. Because for me, those are the real rewards. I know that I'm going to feel so good when I get
Mm.
back from training. And it beats sitting here and stuffing my face with food, because when I sit here and stuff my face with food, I'm gonna feel horrible. And I don't want that. So I'd rather choose the feeling I get after when I come back from a run. So yeah, top of my mind, those two things really,
Mm.
really get you,
Mm.
sticking to your routine, making sure that you do your daily, whatever, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour of
Mm.
training.
Yeah. I think definitely following up on the theme of sticking to a routine, for me, having some sort of a routine for meditation, prayers, and yoga definitely does help me balance my mental health. It's something that can easily slide without a routine
Yeah,
because it's consistent building
yeah,
blocks that you have to invest in making sure that you are in this peaceful state of mind. But the day you don't do it, you notice you're like, oh, now I'm too
yes,
angry. Now I'm self
yeah, something's
sabotaging.
off.
Now I'm self
Mhm.
critical, so.
Yep.
Mm.
Absolutely. And they say whenever you embark on a new journey, whatever, let's say training regimen, they always say it takes 21 days to build a habit. So if you do it
Mm.
consistently for 21 days, chances are that habit has kicked in and then it sticks. So now you are not going to feel
Mm.
okay if you don't do it. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
for instance, your body also tells you, with regards now to training, if you are a person who trains on a regular basis, or whether you go running or you do body weight training, whatever it is, if you miss, for me personally, if I miss 2 days
Mm-hmm.
in a row for whatever reason, my body tells me that something's off. I don't feel okay
Mm-hmm.
until I go
Yeah.
running or until I hit the gym. So yeah, that's what works for me.
Mm. Yeah. So, another journey that you have been on is the journey to understanding and executing self love. What do you believe self love is, and why should it be a value that everyone and anyone should uphold?
That's a huge one. That's a big one. Because I'm
Mm.
saying that because Lord knows it took me forever to discover self love. And I'm
Oh.
talking about radical self
Mm.
love. So, most people, in
Mm.
my opinion, go through life without having discovered self love. And sometimes it takes life kicking you in the butt to discover that self-love. So this is what I have learned, is that
Mm.
when you don't have self-love, you look for it in other people or in the wrong places. You go looking for it, someone to give it to
Mm.
you, because you are not capable of giving it to yourself. So often you look in wrong places, or you look to the wrong people. And then when they don't give it to you the way you
Mm.
want to be loved, or the way you expect, or the way you have painted self love to be, then it's painful. It's really
Mm.
painful. It breaks your heart. And it will keep
Mm.
happening until you learn
Mm.
the lesson. One day you will wake up and say, bugger this. I'm going to love myself so much. So, like,
Mm.
I am going to fill my cup so much
Yeah.
so that I don't need you to fill my cup. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Because my cup will be overflowing. If
Yeah.
if you, Paul, decide to love me over and above how I love myself, it's good. It's okay. It's welcome. But I don't need
Mm.
you to feel good about myself, to feel good in my skin. And so
Mm.
self-love means choosing yourself over and over again, giving yourself 1,001 chances. Like, just one thing I always say I love about myself is that I forgive myself more than probably everybody around me.
Mm.
So, like, if I mess up, I say to myself, "Oh
Mm.
wow, girl, you messed up." But you know what? It's not the end of the world.
Mm.
Let's keep going. Let's try this again.
Yeah.
And also, I want to emphasize that
Oof.
self-love is not egotistical. It's not. When you are talking about
Mm.
self-love and I love myself and all of that, people think you being egotistical, and you're not. There is a difference. Self-love means accepting yourself,
Mm.
all your flaws. It's a process, and Paul, it's not easy. If we are still
Mm.
airbrushing our photos when we
Mm.
put them on Facebook, it means we haven't really quite accepted
Mm.
ourselves, flaws and all. And I don't care, people may disagree with me, but if you
Mm.
still cannot put a photo of yourself without
Mm.
airbrushing it or doing whatever, it means you are not happy with who you are, and you are
Mm.
not ready to give that to the world, to say this is me, flaws and all.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And that's why I'm saying it's a process,
Mm.
because I'm not saying that
Mm.
I am there 100%. I am, but I can say I am maybe three-quarters of the way there, or five-sixths of the way. There are still days when I'm like,
Mm. Mm.
do I really want to share that? And then there are times when I'm like,
Mm.
you know what? I love myself. I do. So if you don't, I mean, it's not your job
Yeah.
anyway to love me.
Mm.
So that's my
I
take.
think you raised such a good point when you say self love has not much to do about being self centered. I think in the
No.
new age or the modern age, we talk about self love as this beautiful and amazing thing, but it's brutal to a sense because it takes you seeing you for who you are,
Yeah.
for what you've done.
Yes.
You know, I just said to my husband, I'm sick and tired of seeing myself as Mpo in the past and Mpo in the present. Those people are the
Right.
same person. There's no two people.
Hmm.
There's no Mpo in the past and Mpo now. I was that
Yeah.
person, and that person led to the person I am now. And realizing that,
Right.
accepting some of the mistakes and the flaws and the wrong decisions that we made at that time to come here is, it can be brutal. It can break you, if anything, and it's always beginning again.
Yeah. 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 Which is why I'm saying
Mm,
it's
mm,
forgiving yourself first, and saying, so I did those things. Wow,
mm,
but I didn't know better then. Now
mm,
I know better. So, I forgive myself. I'm gonna do better. I'm always going to do my best going forward.
mm,
And so it's a lifelong journey as far as I'm concerned. And
mm,
there are people who will try and use your past
mm,
to get to you, like, or to diminish you, or to make you feel bad about yourself. Oh, do you remember when we were in school, you used to do this and this? And thinking that that's gonna make you
mm,
feel ashamed, or
mm,
feel bad about yourself. Okay, so I did those things, but now I'm not that
mm,
person anymore. And not to say, I'm not, is when you were
mm,
trying to explain the person before and the person now, but to say I am now making better decisions. I have grown from
mm,
those experiences, and learning to understand also that everything happens for a reason. Everything, the good and the bad, and it's all to shape
mm,
you into the person that you are now.
mm,
So maybe you had a drug problem when you were 18, but there was a
mm,
reason for it. I truly believe there was a reason
mm,
for it. And let me use Ulunga, right, who was my guest, and Ulunga was talking about his struggle with substance abuse and all of that. But look at what he's doing now. Look at, I mean, would he
mm,
be such an advocate for substance abuse
yeah.
and gender-based violence had he not experienced those things? So that's why I'm saying that everything happens for a
Mm,
reason. We should not be ashamed of the
mm,
experiences we've had, or the choices we made in the past. We did what we could then with what we had. That's my take.
hmm. So good. I'm not even going to add to that. That is so good. Okay, so speaking of your episode with Lunga, let's talk a little bit about your podcast. You started podcasting in October of 2020. Talk me through the process that led you to start a podcast and then discovering the purpose of your podcast
Yes,
show. What was that like?
right. So this is the way I went about it. I was in lockdown, like the rest of the world. We were all in lockdown. And I was thinking, what do I do with myself?
Mm,
And for me, where I started was by discovering
mm,
the writer in me, the fact that I love writing, putting my thoughts onto paper. Well, I'm using paper not in the
mhm.
literal sense, but typing on the keyboard and
As an
and
expression.
pouring out exactly my thoughts. So writing about my experiences, and I've always loved writing about my experiences. Years ago, I used to travel a lot for work, and I would go to interesting places like Uganda, where the culture is totally different, and I would write about it on Facebook, what I experienced,
Mm.
the traffic in Uganda, the funny things I've seen, people riding with a goat on a motorbike. And people would love my stories and they would laugh and say, "You're such a good storyteller." And I didn't know this. I thought I was just, saying, "Hey guys, you won't believe what I saw," but then I would explain and people would love that. But I didn't know that I had a love for,
Mm.
writing about those things or any of my experiences. So then when we were in lockdown, I started writing about my experiences of
Mm.
lockdown. This is what happened to me. And I remember I had a situation where I ran out of gas for, my stove for cooking. And I was driving around Cape Town looking for a place that was open so I can, get some gas refill. And then that's when I discovered that, I actually love writing about these things, So then why not write about the things that really light up my soul, things that I love? I love, um, you know, working out. So I can share some of my workout
Mm.
routines while we are under lockdown. And, I had even invited some friends to do some
Mhm.
working out over Zoom and things like that. And my friends are like, "You're really good with the stuff, So slowly I'm discovering those things. So then that led to me creating my
Mm.
website, my blog. So I started blogging about those things. And
Mhm.
then while we're under lockdown, we are not allowed to travel. Let me blog about my travel experiences, because I have so much travel experience. I've gone to so many places and I've got all these
Mm.
pictures that are sitting on my laptop, so then I create a post about a day in Paris or a day in whatever. So then I started thinking, let me talk
Mm.
to other
Mm.
people about their experiences of living under lockdown. And then I identified people in different career
Mm.
fields. I interviewed a doctor, interviewed a company CEO, interviewed
Mhm.
an R&B musician. Like, how is living under lockdown affecting you personally and in terms of your
Mhm.
career? So what I used to do then in Paul was to send people a list of questions, like a
Mm.
questionnaire, and say, "Would you mind filling this up out for me?" And then they will send me back the answers,
Mhm.
and then I will write a blog post. But then I started thinking, no, man, the conversation would flow
Mm.
so much better if it was, an interview and exchange, whether audio or video, where I ask the question,
Yeah.
you respond, and then I probe a bit more,
Mhm.
whatever. It would flow so much better than if I just send you a questionnaire and you fill it up.
Mhm.
Because sometimes when you return the questionnaire, then I
Mm.
wish I had probed a bit more on this. You know what I mean? And in fact, one of my guests even
Mm.
commented on that, if we had done this maybe all over audio, it would have
Mm.
been so much better. That's when the idea of a
Yeah.
podcast was planted in my head. And as the universe would have it, I am a
Mm.
regular meditator, right? And I have this app that I use for meditation. And one day
Mhm.
I'm on the app, and then what do you know? I discover there's a podcast section on the app. And so I go into that, and one of the first few episodes, they are talking about how to launch your own podcast.
Mm.
So I'm like, oh my word, it's the universe. It's telling me that's, sending me
Mhm.
signs and synchronicities. This is the way I should be
Mm.
going. Why not start my own
Mm.
podcast? Because all the signs are pointing
Mhm.
to it. So then that's how the idea was born. But then in terms of what my podcast would be about, to answer your last
Mhm.
question, I guess for me, because I had been on this journey of self discovery, I had lost my job,
Mm.
when I was retrenched. And I was still trying to figure out my next move. What do I love? What are the things I'm passionate about? What can I talk about all day without feeling bored?
Mm.
I mean, that's how you identify your
Yeah.
passions. And then I was like, okay, now that I've discovered my love for writing, blogging and, podcasting and all of that, why not find other people to talk about how they have discovered their life calling?
Hmm.
So that's how the idea was born.
Mm.
Tell us how you became a podcaster. were you, I mean, always thinking that way when you were
Mm.
6 years old? Did you know you were going to be a musician?
Mm.
What was that like for you? And how did you get to it? Or maybe you didn't. You discovered it by chance, like I did when I lost my 9 to 5. And then that's when I discovered this. So just to share on that. So all my guests really, when they come on the show, they come to tell us about how they've discovered what they call their life
Mm.
calling or their passions. What was the journey like? Because the aim is for me to help others who are still trying to figure out this thing called life.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what it is about.
And I think that, I've listened to a couple of episodes from your podcast show, most recently being the episode with Ulunga. And I agree with you.
Yeah,
You have to find something that interests you to keep going in podcasting. Otherwise, 10 episodes in your podcast is like, I sing Pelile to peak munch, you know?
exactly.
So it does happen. So let me slight focus on the Lunga episode, gender-based
Yeah,
violence. Is that something that you are passionate about? Lunga talks about being an activist, taking militant
yeah,
action for something that you're passionate about. Would you
yeah.
say you're an activist?
Absolutely, without a doubt. For me, it's anything to do with women and anything to do with children.
Mm,
It literally brings
mm,
me to tears. Every time I
mm,
read about another woman who had to go through it, anything that touches on the lives of children, and and I have this weird thing where I personalize things. I actually literally put myself in the shoes of that person. Let me make an example. When
mm,
oh God, I hope I don't get triggered. When I the girl that was killed by the guy at the post office, what's her name now?
mm.
My
That
I
was
have
in
a
Cape
mental.
Town. I remember.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Not so long ago,
Mm,
about 2 years ago, or just under 2 years. When that
not
happened,
Solofelo.
Mpho, I'm going to remember her name just now. When that happened, I lived on that street where the post office was, where the post office is. That was my street. My kids used to go to that very same post office. My kids are exactly her age. They are, do you see what I mean? They used to go to that post office because my kids
Mm,
loved to order things from overseas, and then they will get these parcels where they have to go and collect their
mm,
parcels. When this happened,
mm,
I became her mother. I was like, that is my child.
mm,
That could have happened to my child.
mm,
So anything, any woman, and I'm using her because that's the most recent one, but any woman who gets beat up or who
mm,
goes missing, or any child who's found in the dustbin dead, it becomes my
mm,
child. you know so I'm very, very
mm,
passionate about those things. And sometimes, so let me make another example. There's these jokes that get passed around on WhatsApp chats and all of that. There's one very recent
mm.
one where there is a girl who's dating a guy who's what did they call it? Those guys who carry guns and they like known for being violent and whatnot. Not a mobster, I can't remember what they called it.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if you saw that video. And so what happens is the guy calls her because he's been trying to call her and she wasn't picking up her phone, and so she's got now missed calls. I don't know how many missed calls. And so he's like, where are you, where are you? And she says, I'm
Mm,
so sorry, I'm at home, da, 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 da. Meanwhile, he's outside her door, and you see her putting on her his I mean, you see him putting on his balaclava, getting ready, cocking his gun, and then she screams to her family to lock the door because she knows he's coming for her. I mean, the way it's done is like one of those
mm,
TikToks. It's funny, people laugh, when you're dating a mobster or whatever.
mm,
Eh, but the thing for me is it's gender violence. It's gender based. It's built on gender-based violence. And someone called me a party pooper when I said, okay, yeah,
Mm,
I get the fact that people are making these skits to be funny, and we are all entertaining each other, TikTok, whatnot, memes.
mm,
But I can't help but think this whole thing is built on a very serious issue of gender-based violence.
mm.
So that's just me, yeah, and where I stand with regards to gender-based violence.
And I think you and I share the same sentiments in the sense that there is a culture to it, whether we refer to the rape of women as a rape culture or the abuse of women as a culture. You know, people sit around in a circle and laugh at things like that, but people also sit around in a circle and cry about things like that when they end in someone dying or someone's child being killed.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, like you say, for us to draw the line and to recognize where funny is funny only because it's reality. And at any given point in time, it could be one of us's reality,
Yes, everyone's
Um,
going through them.
I Yeah, I cannot imagine, when I think of you, I think of my mother because you guys are very close in age. And like yourself,
Mhm.
my mom's a mother of two daughters. And the
Yeah.
conversations that I've always had with my mom when there's an increasing rate of femicide and gender based violence in South Africa, it's always like, who do you go to? Who do you talk to? What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? What time are you supposed to come home? What don't you, there's always those conversations. And I imagine it's the same for you and your daughters. Like, you want to know where they are, not because you don't trust them, but because you want to still be able to protect them.
Yeah, absolutely. And and
Mm,
and there was a time when my daughter was so terrified of getting in an Uber to go anywhere, because she was
mm,
just like, I do not trust these men. Um, she
mm,
was terrified. So, I mean, that impacts your everyday life. And there will be times when she needs to go to town for a job that she's doing or whatever. So then she would ask me to go drop her off at the bus station. She takes a bus,
mm,
and then when she gets to town, she has to call me and say, I'm here, I'm safe, you know. And the same when she's coming back, get in the
mm,
bus, then I have to be at the bus stop waiting to pick her up. Even if it messes up my day or whatever, it impacts your life, because now I have to go pick up my daughter there. I have to do this.
mm,
And not because I don't want to do my parental responsibilities, but because this is something we should not be worrying about. I should not be worried about my daughter getting off the
mm,
bus and walking something that's less than a kilometer to the house. But now, because we are
mm,
living through these times, now this is something that has to impact all of us.
mm,
And yes, as a mother of two, I am terrified. you know every day I
mm,
have to ask her. Now I'm in Durban and she's in Cape Town, the youngest. And if a day or two goes past,
mm,
and yes, I have to give her space as well. But 2 days go past, and I'm like, Lulu, are you okay? Because you're quiet, and it's kind of
mm.
bugging me that you're quiet. And she'll be like, no, mom, I'm fine. I'm just busy. Like, I don't want to be a mother hen, but I want to know. The last day I spoke with her was on Valentine's Day, and she sent me a picture of her, the roses and whatnot, the bouquet that she received for Valentine. And then Monday, Tuesday, she's quiet, and I'm freaking out. I mean, what kind of a life is that? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
And that's the
mm.
reality of now of living in South Africa, at the least.
Yeah. And, I think oftentimes when I have conversations like this, I feel bad because it almost sounds like I'm bad mouthing South Africa. There are so many good things about South Africa to enjoy. the cultures,
Yeah.
the sense of humor, our
Yeah.
ability to move past presidents stealing money over corruption with us,
Oh,
we
yeah.
just laugh it over and we
Yeah.
keep going. And so there's so many beautiful things, but I also think that
Yeah.
over and above those beautiful things, we need to focus on these things because I recall the president Cyril Ramaphosa's speech regarding opening South Africa back up after locking it down for so long. And one of his reasons was the rates for gender based violence and femicide has been increasing because people are locked up with their abusers.
Can you
And
imagine?
so the world has different pandemic issues, right? But South Africa has very specific,
Yeah.
over and above a pandemic killing people, people are killing each other inside their houses.
In their houses. Like, where else? If you cannot be safe in your home, where else are you supposed to feel safe? Um, and it's this
Oh my
whole
God.
culture of
Mm,
entitlement. And South African men can shoot me down and do whatever. I don't mean literally. I mean, they can come for me. But South African men are so entitled. They are so entitled.
mm,
Like, you own a woman. Like, what is that? Like, what is that again? Where does
mm,
this come from?
mm,
Um,
mm,
it blows my mind. It's crazy. Um, and people are not safe in their homes. I grew up,
mm,
with my dad being, I told you in an earlier conversation I had with you that my mom and my dad used to fight. I would lock myself in the bedroom with my
mm,
sister and listen to the screams, my mom
mm,
and my dad screaming at each other,
mm,
throwing things. And that's the culture that you
mm,
grow up in. You know what I mean? So for others, it's all they know. This is, you grow up in that environment, in that household. It's all you know. So then
mm,
maybe you equate that to love, right? And you think this is how people display
mm,
love. If you hit me, it means you really truly care
mm,
for me. Because if you don't, it means you don't care.
mm,
So that's the interpretation of what love is supposed to look like.
mm,
And so they attract similar partners.
mm,
And the whole thing is
mm,
just passed down from one generation to the next. And no one is saying that this is wrong.
mm,
This needs to be challenged. And
hmm,
you know
mm,
and when I laugh, I'm not laughing because this is funny. It's my way of saying I don't get it.
mm,
It's really messing up with my
yeah.
mind right now. So
Mm,
yeah, so people don't
yeah.
question it. It's like this is normal until someone
Mm,
dies,
mm.
you know, and then it ends in tears, as they say.
I was just about to say it will end in tears.
It will end in tears. And it's just another statistic.
Mm. So you raised such a good point, when you say you see it in the home and then you go out and you unconsciously try and replicate those kind of relationships in your own life. I think in that conversation that you and I had when we were preparing for this episode, it was the childhood traumas that can take you forever to heal from and to recognize
Yeah.
that this is not how life is supposed to be. This is not how love is supposed to feel like. And even when you are finally in that
Mhm.
good place, experiencing that good love, that traumatized side of you is still coiling up and fearing for its life.
Yes. Yes. Uh, Because I mean, the childhood traumas, they usually go undetected, if that's the right
Mm,
word, or undiagnosed.
mm,
So often we don't know why we are the way we are. We don't know why we are anxious people, because we were anxious kids. We always had to run and hide. you know, um, we don't know why we are impatient, but it's because something happened in our childhood where things were not done in time, and then we had to learn to do them for ourselves. We had to grow up quickly, too quickly. and, and so we become very impatient adults. We don't understand why it takes other people so long to make a decision. And I was one of those people who, I'm still working on my impatience, and I always laugh and say God is working with me. He's still teaching me lessons about being patient. And my sister said to me one day, we were talking about this, and she said, I'm exactly like you. We are impatient. And I said, but where does it come from? And she said, but it's because, remember, Uma used to be so laid back about stuff. Like, Uma, the year would begin and you wouldn't have secured a school to go to. And Uma was just so laid back about it. And you didn't know which school you were going to. And you'd be like, but I need a school. And, and so then you would end up taking it upon yourself to secure a school for yourself. You see what I mean? Now you're learning to grow up too quickly, too soon, because the parent is just so, like so relaxed about it. And so my sister pointed it out to me, and she said, remember, Uma was like that. And so we learned very early on in life that if something is going to get done, I'm going to just have to get up and do it myself. So now, because you are that kind of a person, you expect everyone around you to figure things out quickly. Why do you take so long to make a decision about stuff? So
Procrastination.
even in relationships, yeah, even in relationships, you can't stand a person who takes too long, because when you are already 10 steps ahead, you've already figured out this is how it's supposed to happen, and they are still thinking about it. But I'm using that as just one example of childhood traumas. Yeah, or whether it's trust issues, like I said, or whether it's this ongoing anxiety where you don't understand where it comes from. It's because of the environment you grew up in, and you may not necessarily connect the dots.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
sometimes it takes professional help to connect the dots, it's because
yes,
it's unconscious behaviors that we do. And so you don't see it. Someone has to
yeah.
look at you from the outside and go, huh, why do you do it like that? Yeah.
Right. So,
Mm,
a few years ago, I started seeing a therapist, and I went to see a therapist because I had reached a point in my life where I knew that I wanted to file for divorce, but I needed to talk to someone who's not a friend, because friends are going to take sides. You know what I mean? Either they take your side, or they try and do their best to say, no, 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 don't leave him. You can still work on this, whatever. So I had already made up my mind that I wanted out. So I needed to talk to someone who's not going to take sides, who's just going to listen to me and help me think through the process. And one of the themes that came out during my days with her, because I did like 10 or 11 sessions with her, one of the recurring theme was how much of a people pleaser I am, which I didn't, see about myself until then. So, what you were saying, sometimes it takes an outsider to point it out. And and
yeah.
and so she said to me, where does it come from? And I was like, I don't know where it comes from. But as we were going through our sessions, I then realized that it probably mainly comes from being raised by my grandma, who was all about, you have to be a good person, Thola. Be a good person. Like, to her, you could be anything. But if you are not a good person, like by good person means a nice person, a kind person,
Mm,
put others before you. You know that whole thing,
mm,
that whole saying of others first and self last. Like that was drummed
mm,
into me as a child. Others first,
mm,
self last. But what it means
mm,
is you end up in life, in reality, it doesn't serve us, especially in
mm,
these times that we are living in, because it means you always put yourself last. It
mm,
doesn't matter about my feelings as long as everyone else
mm,
in the room is okay. You know what I
mm,
mean?
mm,
So then
mm,
your decisions are based on that. That, oh no, no, no. You put yourself last, as in you become a second class citizen,
mm,
in your own world. And everybody else comes first. So if it means
mm,
staying in an unhappy marriage, you're going to stay in an unhappy
mm,
marriage because that's putting others first. Who cares about your
mm,
feelings? you know
mm,
so yes, absolutely, I agree with you. Sometimes it takes someone who's external to say, have you noticed this about yourself? You keep saying this. Where does it come from?
mm, mm.
Yeah.
I do think not just, your grandmother's generation and maybe my mother's generation and my generation, we were raised to have ubuntu, and it's an appealing characteristic to
Yes.
have, to want to care for the community, care for your friends, care for your family. My generation now so strongly speaks or distastefully speaks about black tax. We don't want to hear it. We're like, no, I'm not going to take
Yes.
care of ubanbani and ubanbani who keeps having abantwana and ubanbani.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it it circles back to that point of self-love. Self-love will teach you
Yeah.
to put you first, but then recognize that
Yes.
not everyone will be happy when you come first. you,
Oh yes. Oh yeah. No, 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 no one wants that. That's selfish. Inverted commas. That is selfish.
oh, yeah. Mm,
So yes, it comes from a spirit of Ubuntu. You are right.
mm,
That's exactly what it is. Others first and self last.
mm,
And so when you say, no, 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 I choose myself. Now I'm putting myself first. Then you are upsetting the whole apple cart,
mhm,
because why are you being different? You are so
mm,
selfish.
mm,
She only thinks about herself. Um,
mm,
People don't like it when you put yourself first, because it means you
mm,
are saying, you know what, I will consider what your needs, but let me make sure. And I do speak about this as well, I think in one of my podcast episodes, is that how important it is to make sure that your cup is filled before you fill other people's
mm,
cups. Because how are you filling other people's cups if yours is empty?
hmm,
And so that's
mm,
self-love.
yeah, so good.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I don't want to go without
Okay.
asking this, so I'm going to squeeze it in. COVID happened.
Right.
South Africa has a new COVID variant. You attended your first online funeral. Like, what?
It's crazy. It's crazy. And wow, COVID, I believe, again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Everything happens for a reason.
Mm,
I A part of me thinks there's a reason for this. There is a
mm,
reason for this. And I had lunch with my friends over the weekend. Okay, yes, let me make an example. And we were talking about this whole thing of having to put your mask on, and how annoying it is that you have to put your mask on all the time, you
mm,
know. And we were saying, people who, one industry that I'm sure has been affected a lot by this COVID situation is the makeup industry. Because now you
mm,
ask yourself, why should I put makeup on my face if I'm going to put a mask on? you know and it
mm,
messes the mask, and the mask looks horrible, and. And in any
Mm.
case, we were saying, you know what the lesson is, though, that COVID has come to teach us is that so many of these things that we thought matter don't matter. They really, it has just made so many things not matter.
Mm.
Like, who cares about makeup? Who cares about buying lipstick? Because you know what I mean? So, yes, it has
Mm.
affected the industry, but it has taught us that we really do not need these things, you know.
Mm.
And so we were laughing at that and all these lessons that we are learning from
Mm.
COVID. And then I was saying, but one lesson that I have learned, and I'm one person who's very happy and comfortable to spend time alone. You know, when my kids are with
Mm.
their dad, I'm usually alone in the house. So I've become very comfortable with myself and spending time alone. But
Mm.
when you have to spend time alone, especially those people who are not, you know, coupled up or whatever, and you have to spend 30 days in your house by yourself, it messes up your head. You know, and so we were saying, so then therefore the lesson is, one of the most powerful lessons we've learned from this is that we need each other. We need, even if it's in
Mm.
small doses, you know,
Mm.
we still need, hey Paul, how's it going? You know, how are you
Mm.
managing, and all of that. And sometimes,
Mm.
you know, with the lockdown rules, depending whether restaurants, coffee shops are open or not, let's grab a quick coffee. But you know, just so that
Mm.
you can see another human being, and even if
Mm.
you still 30 minutes with that human being and not be talking to yourself and talking to your four walls, but just to, you know, so
Mm.
it has kind of made us realize that we need each other. We need each other
Mm.
for our mental health, but we also need each other for survival, because hey, I
Mm.
still need the shopkeeper. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I still need the plumber. I still need the
Mm.
electrician when you know my geyser acts up, or whatever the case is. So for me, those are the huge lessons that I'm drawing out of this lockdown
Yeah.
situation. But yes,
Mm.
lifestyle changes, as you are saying, funerals, you know, so again, I'm going to cycle back and say, therefore, it has made us question a whole lot of things, because do we need these huge gatherings? So now we've learned you can have a whole funeral online. We've learned people who are church goers, you know, your avid church goers who want to go to church every Sunday and bond with fellow Christians and whatnot. Do you really need that? I mean, it's made us question that. So you can
Mm.
worship online, right? So, like right now, I'm thinking I really need to buy Amazon shares because online shopping is booming.
They're so expensive. I looked at them. They're so expensive. Even in dollars, they're still
Yes.
expensive.
I know, but I'm working on it. So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I mean, I was just trying to share on, you know, the lessons. For me, it's mostly about what lessons
Mm.
have I learned from living under
Mm.
lockdown, you know. The question I'm asking myself right now is, going forward, if we woke up tomorrow and we were told there's no more COVID, right? People are
Mm.
vaccinating now, everything is happening, things are moving
Mm.
fast. So if we woke up tomorrow and we were told COVID is no longer a thing,
Mm.
do you think we will go back to how life was pre-COVID? Because I personally think I'm still going to be sanitizing myself to death. You know,
Mm.
I'm still going to be, some of the behaviors that I've learned, I'm still going to be a bit anxious about shaking someone's hand. I'm still going to be a bit unsure about being in a large gathering. So I kind of
Mm.
feel like it has come to change the way we move going forward.
Mm. I feel the same way too, in the sense that for me personally, though, I've always been a germaphobe. I've always not trusted that everybody washes their hands after they use the restroom, or that everybody gets home and washes their hands. I'm I'm kind of one of those people who would be on a TV show about extreme cleanliness. I like scrub the toilet, scrub the sink, get the grime out. I've always been
Yes.
that person. And so COVID's made me even worse. You know, my when it first started, my hands were
Yeah.
dry. I was over sanitizing and I didn't want to touch anybody. Till this day, I'm like, don't, we can elbow, but don't
Yeah.
touch me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I can imagine for people like yourself, it's even 10 times worse. But for even for a normal man on the street,
Mm,
it's definitely changing the way we relate to each other.
mm,
So yes, we are second guessing those hugs.
mm.
We are second guessing everything. We we are over sanitizing. I don't know about the mask situation, whether we
Mhm.
will keep putting our masks on, but maybe the lesson will be, even if we no longer need our masks, we might just learn we don't need makeup. Natural is the way to go.
There's a lot of things we don't
you
need,
know
you know. We probably don't need to go to church every Sunday physically. We
that's
probably
what I'm
don't need to
saying.
have big funerals and slaughter cows and sheep and feed abo banban no banban. We can have small
Right,
weddings. You know, there's so many lessons, like you said, that we've
right.
learned. Yeah, yeah.
Which hopefully we are going to apply going forward.
Mm,
So that's why I'm saying, in closing this question, that's why I'm saying to you, as bad as it is with the COVID situation, I think there's a big reason behind it. There were tough
mm,
lessons that had to be learned. They were
mm.
it's ushering a new way of life, of how we
Mm,
move going forward. And
yeah,
for me, that's a win.
yeah.
I choose to look at the positive of everything. I define myself as Miss Positive. So for everything, there's a lesson, there's a reason, and I embrace the lessons.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we close up, you've shared so many good things, but I always have to ask, like, this is my new thing. What is your message to the world, to the podcast listeners, and anyone who hears us? What is the message from your heart?
The message from my heart is always choose you.
Hmm.
And by that, I do not mean be selfish. I mean take care of number one first.
Mm,
Put on your mask before you put the mask on the passenger next to you. And
mm,
always operate from your highest self. And again, I know we all falter. It's a lifelong thing. We learn lessons, but I am learning to always ask myself, and I shared this again in the last episode of my podcast. I'm learning to ask myself before I make whatever decision, am I operating from the highest version of myself? And what would my higher self do in this case? And for me, that's what I would love for everyone to embrace, is to always ask yourself, what would the highest version of myself do?
That's so good. It's all about up leveling. You put self love, you put up leveling, being the best version of yourself, and recognizing the higher
Right?
self. Oh my goodness, I feel so good.
Right?
Thank you so much for spending time with us. What I appreciate most about you, Thola, is your honesty, openness, and willingness to be your authentic self. You know, whenever we've conversated, had discussions, you've always just been you, and it's so refreshing. So thank you for spending your morning, your very,
Thank
very early
you.
morning with us.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity as well, and for finding me worthy to spend time with. And for me, that's a big deal. And for the work that you are doing, Paul, you are so much younger than me, but I'm learning from you. I was saying to my other guest as well, every person that I meet and every person who comes onto my podcast as well, I always leave the chat as somehow as a better person than I came into the chat, if that makes sense, because I'm learning so much from the interactions that we are having. And it doesn't matter who's older, who's younger, whatever. I feel like I'm learning every day. I'm growing. And this is a lifelong process. And so I want to thank you for the work that you are doing, for putting a spotlight in South Africa as well. And like we said, it's not all roses and rainbows, but we will get there.
We will.
As a country, we are a work in progress. Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. We definitely wish you continued success on your podcasting adventures and your many, many career adventures. We know that you'll do well. And as a show, we are always here to support you, to share your work, and to embrace you.
Thank you so much. Same here. And I appreciate you, working with me as well, building each other up. And I look forward to hosting you again on my podcast. Thanks, Mpho.
Okay, Journey with Mpho family, that wraps up our time with the amazing Thola Bennie. If you would like to connect or collaborate with Thola, her contact information is in the episode notes. And if you are interested in purchasing her book, 50 and Fabulous at 50, you can find the link in the infamous episode notes. As always, I love you guys so very much. Until then, maholo kwe, kyo taba, re buile. Aloha.